Word to the cloud.
Good morning. This is the meeting of the Nominations, Valuations, and Council Policy Committee. We are here on February 13th with snow falling outside. All right, nice to see you all. We have Clint DeShan, our town manager, myself, Sarah Marks, town councilor Rob Laraway, and town councilor Jacob Baker. Good to be here. Clint, I'm assuming I have the ability to screen share.
Good.
Okay, I'm looking. Yep, I see share. So I have flagged, I sent you all the draft that I put together. Most of that draft is information that already had gone out in surveys, emails to this group as we've been working through the 360 evaluation process. But some things were things that I added based on notes, not documents you've seen in writing before. So I certainly want to go back and make sure we take a look at those, but I also want to have time to hear from all of you on any items of concern. I did get some messages back from Jacob. So I know a few questions Jacob had. I'm not sure for either Rob or Clint, but I just want to say up front, the goal of this today is to make sure everybody's questions are getting answered and that we feel confident as a group putting out our report back to the council. I put on the screen right now the last page of the report before the addenda and attachments start. Because I know that, this is a question Jacob had, and I'm sure it's a question other counselors will have about how this would be paid for if council were to vote to do the consultant options, which, since we're going backwards through the document, we haven't seen those yet, but on the previous page, if we hired just the HR consultant, the estimate for that was a couple of hours of Lori's time, so that's $200 to $400. If we hired also a data analyst, the low end of that would be 600 and the high end of that is 2,500, depending on who we hired and what level of data presentation we wanted back. So total, the maximum amount we could be looking at would be at max 2,900. At the lowest, it could be zero if we didn't even hire the personnel consultant, but this group seemed quite clear in our conversations that we were recommending to council that at the least we hired the human resources consultant to take a look through the survey for us. So I think the low end we're looking at is really 400 and the high end is 2,900. Clint, this question was highlighted for you basically coming into today's meeting. Just you had said that there was money left in 3 lines, the existing human resources contract with Lori, the council discretionary line, and the manager training line, which you had believed together would cover this cost. Is that true up to the 2,900 level?
I'm gonna call it 3, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
double check as we speak, and I'll come back to you with an
Okay.
answer to that.
Okay. And
And it's
also,
council discretionary.
yeah. And also the question here is, I think we could take out the higher than 3,000 because unless Jacob or Rob have a proposal left that they think is going to be higher than 3,000, I don't think that's going to be relevant. How are you feeling about that, Rob and Jacob?
Yeah. Fine. Yeah. But so to clarify though, this would be going into next year's budget, or will we be taking funds out of unspent line items in this year's budget? Because we're not starting until this
September, right?
this fall. Yeah.
That's a good question. I suppose when we had these discussions the first time around, we hadn't yet decided that we were definitely recommending to do this in the fall as opposed to the spring.
But we could essentially take the money that we're not spending this year, and instead of going into the reallocation, which I think happens, we can just roll it forward into spending next year on this.
I'm going to wait for Clint. You ready to answer, Clint?
I working on it, pulling it up. And I was listening as I was doing it. I think it's a 2-pronged as well. I think that's a great suggestion. Worst case scenario, if we're a little thin this year, we could put some in to set aside for next year, kind of rolling it forward. And then obviously the budget could be designed so that there is adequate funding for this in next year's request. I mean, this isn't,
Yeah.
I know you're gonna hear this more as we go forward. Every time we add 1,000 here and 1,000 there, all of a sudden you're like, wow, we got 10,000, and then it grows and
That's
grows.
my biggest concern. Yep.
But,
Yeah.
yeah, let me see if, and then I can look a little bit at the budgets, what typical rolling balances are at year ends. It might be that there's adequate funding if it's under 3,000 to do it, but
Okay.
I'll let you know.
And
I'm working.
thanks, Glenn. And Jacob, I do think that, I mean, again, it depends on where council comes in on, what they want to hire. 400 is different than 3,000, right?
Yeah.
And I think it also, even that 400, my perception is that this isn't something that we would have to keep running by the HR consultant every year. I think it's really more to get a one-time assessment on, the basic format and the style of questions. And unless we change something significant from year to year, I don't expect that it's a repeating yearly cost anyway, necessarily. Are you assuming that?
No, I'm not at all.
Yeah.
And I mean, after our conversation earlier this week, I mean, I'm in support of this for the primary reason because it's in Clint's contract. So I'm not on board for this to be a continuing thing unless it turns out to be a banner wow activity this year. So
Okay,
I'm not
so
even thinking about future years.
gotcha. I wasn't saying that. I do think
No,
it
I know.
to
I
repeat,
know.
but I think that even if we repeat it, I know you and I are different on that, but
Yeah.
I think even if we repeat it, I don't assume that the Lori Boucher cost repeats
I
every year.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Once we get them blessed by her the first time, there's no need for her to look at them the second time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're just
Okay.
looking at repeated data analyst cost, right?
Presumably, if council decides to hire a data analyst, which they may or may not, right? You saw that there's a proposal to them to decide.
yeah.
We as a group don't seem to have had a consensus on whether the data analyst was a requirement or not. And it affects costs in enough of a way that it seems like that should be a full council decision, is what I heard from us at our last meeting. Are we still
Yeah,
on
no,
board with that?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I just meant if we have a repeated cost,
Yeah.
that's what it would be.
That would be a repeated cost. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to just scroll back up through this document. Then I know this is a little strange, but I wanted to highlight the financial one first because I know that that's of, utmost concern always to council, that we're being responsible with folks' money. People good with going backwards at this point?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So this page here, is talking to council about if they choose to hire a data analyst, basically advantages and disadvantages and cost to the different options. The cost came directly from the emails and text messages from the two possible consultants. On the advantages and disadvantages, I did my best to accurately summarize everything I've heard this committee discuss. Did anyone feel that I missed an advantage or disadvantage they wanted recorded here?
No, I think you captured it.
All right. Excellent. And then we can go back a page. Um, okay, so this next one is the information for council on the various options of how to run the survey. Option one being we do everything ourselves as a council. That means no hiring the HR consultant or a data analyst. So again, I tried to put what advantages and disadvantages are that I've heard talked about in this group. The biggest advantage here is free. The biggest disadvantage is time of council, and also whether we want that expertise brought in to review things. I did put a note here that the RSU school board does theirs by themselves and has done it that way since they began. So this is not here to sway anybody. And if it came across that way, we can take it out. I just am worried if council decides to do it themselves. I do want them to know that this is the experience the RSU has had. And, it seems to work fine, but it takes some counselor time. So
Sarah?
everyone, also,
Clint,
I
you
guess,
got your hand up.
yeah, go. Yeah.
Yeah, the money is, so probably the best line is council training.
Okay.
Because it's kind of, and right now that's got a balance of over 3,000. And if we had to look at the others, there's about another 6, 7 combined from contingency and manager training. So, I think as we're sitting here with roughly 4 months to go, I don't have a lot of additional training items before year end. It's highly likely that if you wanted to encumber the cost, we probably would be able to do it.
And you said there's 3,000 in council discretionary and how much in the other?
Council trainings are around 3,900.
Council training or
contingencies-
manager training? I think we have council discretionary or manager training. Is that wrong?
The two we had mentioned before was council contingency, which is
Okay.
discretionary, 3,000 the balance.
Yeah,
Manager training, 4,200.
yeah,
But I have some trainings that are encumbered already that will be
yeah.
costed against that before year end. So that's overstating its year end balance.
Yeah.
And then the council training line is it got 3,900, and I never had considered that when we first spoke, but again, council training could be funds that you would transfer for this purpose as well. It's your line as a council. If you're not going to fully utilize it, you would have the rights to use it for other purposes.
Okay, I can adjust that to reflect those 3 lines and not the HR contract with Lori. Is
Well,
that
the HR contract with Lori, again, we're going back and forth. She has balances left over, so I would just use hers into that time. We have the agreement from last fall we signed with her, and I can fit it within that.
Okay.
So I guess you would say the contract with Lori could absorb her $200 review
Yeah.
cost.
Okay,
Yep.
I can adjust that. Jacob, did I get your financial questions answered?
It did, yeah.
Okay, Great.
Going back to the data analysis piece,
yeah.
and I'm thinking out loud here. Is there a way? So there are going to be some, myself included, who don't want to spend a dime on this. However, I also realize that that's not realistic because I'm not willing to do the data analysis or to put the time into doing the data analysis. And staff shouldn't and couldn't do it anyway. So is there a way to, frame it as either you pay for it or you do it yourself type of thing?
Right.
Do
I
you
mean,
see
that's
what
what
I'm
I'm trying to
saying?
highlight here in the yellow line. Basically, I mean, I agree too. I'd rather not spend money when we don't have to, but that involves a counselor stepping up, right?
Yeah, and
I don't think
mean,
I don't think it's a huge lift from what, I've heard from the school board. It's just time. SurveyMonkey creates all the graphs and things for you that you can paste in. I mean, but it's just time sitting there cutting and pasting things back and forth, for council to have an easy way to look at them. And you're 100% right. It would have to be a counselor. It can't be anyone on staff. So
And-
I think
No, and
this is,
Just to clarify though, the software we own that will put out the survey will compile the responses.
Yeah.
In that you know what people answered, but it's not going to analyze. It's, and
right.
so and I would be leery of AI.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, not happening.
Yeah.
Right.
I
Okay.
mean, the thing, so yeah, that's my thoughts, but also Leo's gonna vote no because he doesn't want to spend a dime, but he's not gonna actually take this project on either. So again,
Yeah.
is there a way to frame I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
again
I think
thinking
I'm
out
gonna
loud, but
Yeah.
is there a way
I
to
think
frame
I'm
the
gonna-
vote? Either
Jacob,
you
I
spend
think
the
I'm
money
gonna
or
let
do it
you-
yourself.
Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you, but Jacob, I think you're the one to frame this discussion for council and say, here, council, here's the choice.
You're
Right.
yeah.
If we're
No,
gonna
you're
do
right.
it, we either have to spend a little bit of money or somebody here needs to actually step up. So if you're
Yep.
voting no on not spending the money, then volunteer to step up.
Okay. Yep, I'll do
Um,
that. I'll take on that
Right.
role.
So, okay.
Yep.
Sounds good. Okay, so this part, everyone was comfortable enough here. I got the numbers there. I double checked them, but everyone feel good about the basic framing to let council know, here's your 3 choices. Here's what they each cost you. We're good to go?
Yes.
Okay. Scrolling back up. So this part is, I guess this is a bit bizarre at this point. Maybe we should go back up to the top and go in order for a second. So here we go. Now that we've read to the financial questions, I'm back to the top. Okay. Intro is just the principles that I kept writing down the whole way through as we met so that the council knows these are the things we agreed to are the basic principles to follow. Those haven't changed really at all since anyone last saw them. The only thing I highlighted here for is a Clint question again. On number 12, if we're going to start this survey on the 1st of September, which kind of has to happen to make the fall schedule work, it really probably does matter that the September observer is actually out by September 1st. Clint, do you think that's something staff can commit to? I know they're typically out by the 1st, but sometimes they get delayed and don't come out until the 15th on a given month, or 10th, I think, or something like that. Is it too much to ask staff to make a commitment that this one really goes out on September 1st?
No, I think you telling us now, and we tell everybody that contributes, it's going out September 1st, and
Okay.
if a counselor or a staff member can't get it in by September 1st, they don't get their story in.
Okay.
We'll just tell the team that's a hard date. So, and again, I mean, that's not something the council needs to take a vote on.
No, it's not. It's just that we put them in this list of, sort of principles about like that to make this work, right? And to work the
So
way
I
it
will
needs
wait
to.
till you vote to do all this.
Yeah,
'Cause
100%.
last thing I want to do is say, hey,
Yeah,
everybody,
no,
September 1 right now. I'll wait till the votes are all in line. Everybody does it, and then we'll say, yeah, September 1's got to be. Yeah,
Okay.
I would just say, yeah.
That's not a problem. I just wanted to double check. It's not a thing that we know anything much about on council.
We'll
So
write the memo to say that we would need the observer to have a September 1st deadline.
Yeah.
With no, and it's September 1's a holiday, say September 2nd.
okay. So we would need the observer to have a September 2nd deadline, which our town manager has confirmed can be done.
Or sooner.
Yeah, or sooner. Sooner is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did anyone have any concerns on any of this part, or can we've seen this so many times. Okay. Okay, great. All right. So the first council vote really, so Clint and I had met and Clint had suggested that these votes sort of happen in sequence. I mean, the first vote is really just, are we agreeing to do this survey, I guess? And I didn't even put that because I was under the impression they had sent us off saying that was our job, was they wanted to do it, and our job was to tell them how to do it. But I guess I do want to ask you all, do we need this to say, beyond rejecting or accepting the schedule for doing it, that we're also accepting that we're going to do it? Or
I can help you.
I have no opinion.
Clint?
I think Jacob's already answered this for you earlier.
Yeah,
Wanted
it's in
this
your
in the
contract.
contract.
Yeah.
My contract says it, and you voted to
you.
accept it. So whether
you.
that stays in future years, I think Jacob and you and the council can debate this for future years, but with me, obviously, is a conversation as we go forward. But for the first year, you've made the commitment, you're gonna do it. And
Yeah.
I mean, we could get in a room and say we don't want to, and if that's what you want to do, I mean, we can sit and talk about that. I'm not unamenable. It's just, this is some of the things we wanted to do. This was a
Yeah.
high council priority at that moment. So
100%. Thanks, Clint. I just wanted to clarify that with the group because I think there was a discussion at one point about whether that vote needed to happen. I thought it did not. I thought council had already made that decision. As you said, we did vote on your contract. It's in your contract. And our charge when we were sent off was to tell them how to do it, I thought, not whether to do it. But I wanted to confirm that with everyone.
And Sarah, when you present this, will you make that piece explicitly clear? And I mean, I will also reiterate what you said. I think that'll be helpful.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we're currently legally obligated to do so. So
Yeah.
we're doing it.
Yeah. Okay. Great. I'm glad we're doing it. So I'm glad about
and
that.
probably
but I
not bad to flag that when we meet and evaluate the process, we can have a conversation in that executive session about
Yeah.
going forward.
Oh, sure. I mean, and I
Whatever
think
that means.
we'll have a lot more data after we do it once to see how it went.
And
Um,
I am also glad we're doing it. I mean, I do want there to be more opportunities for things like this.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it personally, but I know there might be variety of opinion on council about that. So I just want to be respectful about that. Okay. So the first vote will in fact be whether to accept or reject or alter the proposed schedule that we're putting forth. I highlighted this yellow section here. When we last talked as a group, I think this schedule already got looked at once, but I realized in looking back at it that I think it has one extra executive session that we don't really need. So this schedule, when we developed it, we were basing the schedule off of how the RSU has done it, primarily because people in town are used to how the RSU does it. So But they do theirs in the spring. So they have their performance survey evaluation in like March, and then like a month or a month and a half later, they meet again with their town manager for their formal evaluation, sorry, their superintendent for their formal evaluation. So it ends up being 3 executive sessions. And I realized that we are not doing them all in the spring. We've moved ours to the fall. So unless people feel strongly that they want 3 separate executive sessions, which we could do, and that's how it's presented here, in the fall, I think we could reduce this to 2. So if you want to take a look for a minute here, this is basically saying we would meet without the town manager in executive session in early October to look at the survey results. In our later October meeting, we would meet with the town manager in executive session to go over the survey results together. And then council would meet alone to talk about its own evaluation of the town manager in executive session, which is separate from the survey. And then in a third executive session, now we're in early November, we'd come back with the town manager again to give our own feedback as opposed to discuss the feedback from the survey. So this is a 3 executive session scenario. I typed up what the 2 executive session scenario would look like, and I can switch, I think, my screen. It doesn't really make a difference to me, but I think it's something we should at least talk about because, it does 3 executive sessions is a lot of our fall, 3 different days, but it's also fine if we think they need to be separate. What it does mean is that this is a schedule for 2, and I'll be quiet in a minute so you can all read, but if we do this, it does mean that in the same executive session, where as a council, we'll be looking at the performance survey information, and then we'll be switching gears and saying, okay, we're putting that aside, and now we're having our own council discussion about our town manager's performance. And it might be a little harder to switch gears, in the same executive session. We can do it. But that's what it really means. It means that we have to have all that discussion at once. And when we meet with our town manager, likewise, we first have a section which talks about the performance surveys from the community stakeholders. And then we say, okay, that part's done. Now we're giving you our own feedback. Again, it's important to note that this is not the town manager's formal evaluation. This is a 6-month check-in. The formal evaluation will happen in the spring. And we'll have a written evaluation that goes along with it. So anyway, I'm going to shut up and let you all look. I think we need to make a decision on this one.
Is there, I don't know some of the rules around this. Are we able to be given the results of the survey before we go into the session? So then,
yeah, it says in here they'll be sent to us on October 1st, and we won't talk about them until our first executive session. They come in email to us ahead of time.
I see that number one. I just want to be clear that it's not like we're all looking at this for the first time when we go into that first session.
Yeah.
I don't think we really need 3, provided everybody has come having read and with some prepared thoughts, reflections on that. Then the discussion that the council has as a whole in that first executive session is informed by the survey, and we're also able to talk about our varying perspectives so we can come to some sort of conclusive, whatever, by the end of that.
Yep.
And then the next one we have with the manager. I think that feels reasonable to me and cuts down on time. But
Jacob?
I agree. That was one of the things I flagged when you first sent the draft, is it seemed a lot. But no, I agree with everything Rob said. 2 is sufficient.
Yeah, it seems like overkill, and I think it's just a relic of having pasted a structure that came from the spring and not from the fall. Clint, you feel comfortable with the 2 meetings as opposed to 3?
Yes, the only thing as I'm going through the meetings and the other agreements you have to meet with me on updates is that you do 2 a year. I think this second meeting should be not only reviewing the survey, but also one of the check-ins, so that there's a 2-part conversation. 1, together reviewing survey data. 2, check in on how things are going, because your annual will be in May or June, like you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do that, then within the next month or 2, we're going to have a check-in.
completely
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
So we
I
don't
agree
need to meet-
entirely.
Next thing you know, we're meeting every month talking about,
Yeah.
and that's going too far the other way. We
Yeah,
need to
it
have
seems too
check-ins every
much.
6 months, so this should be aligned such that the survey review is also a check-in with the manager on other items and things. Yep.
There's
Yeah.
definitely.
So let's just all take a minute and read number 4 here, because that's the one that's talking about the meeting with the town manager, which I think reflects what Clint just said, but let's all just read it to be sure.
LT20187, disconnect.
Anyone still reading?
Nope.
Okay. And the last sentence is there just because it's important. It's in Clint's contract that I don't predict that this would happen. I think this would be a 6-month check-in and a pretty informal conversation. But if there were to be something that council felt like mattered enough that they wanted him to ask the town manager formally to improve in an area, that needs to go in writing.
So the only thing I would say is that you could simplify this to say consistent with the manager's contract,
Mm-hmm.
because it's the requirement in there. And then the other part is that in bullet 2, you know,
Yep.
it's feedback on the manager's performance and the manager's update on work plan productivity.
Ah, yes. Okay. Sorry, say that phrase again, and managers update.
Update on work plan progress.
Yeah, great.
Because that's kind of what I want to, some of those will be public, some of those will be private, but part of my job is to come in and tell you how the work plan's going.
Yeah.
You know, to maintain that consistency. This is what we want to do.
Yeah. So on the last sentence, I'll just change it somehow to say, consistent with the town manager's contract. If the council were to decide that it has anything it needs improvement on, that has to go in writing. Is that good, Clint?
Yep.
Okay. I basically think that if you guys are good, I'm in agreement with you all. 2 sounds smarter to me than 3, and so I will paste this language in and take the other one out. Everybody good with that?
So Clint, are you okay with the timing? So essentially, council has its executive session, we talk, you get the data, then a week later you have a, depending on when you get it, you know, up to 2 weeks to review it, and then we have our second talk. Is that a good timeline for you to digest?
Yeah,
Okay.
you know, it's funny as you say that, the interesting component of this is that when are you getting me the data?
Yeah. So I built this because it was driving me crazy, the sort of written versions. I put it in a chart with dates. So, and one
Okay, I
column
like
has
this.
the town manager performance steps down the side, of the other column has the council performance survey steps, because sometimes they sort of overlap. So the raw data on the town manager side goes to council on October 1st. Same thing. We get maybe less than a week, but at least 4 or 5 days, probably a week to a week and a half, to take a look at that data before we meet in executive session at our first meeting. As soon as we have had our meeting ourselves and we've taken out any responses that inadvertently reveal some respondent's identity, the data can go to the town manager. So at the latest, it's a week after our meeting. I suspect it can probably come out a day after our meeting. And we would then meet with Clint at our second October meeting. So Clint would have it at a minimum of a week and likely 2 weeks.
Yep. The only thing weird in your bullets, Sarah, is that the second bullet on the first council meeting where it says discuss its own evaluation of the town manager performance, that makes it sound like I'm getting evaluated twice a year.
Right. Need to change the language. Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
just
Where do you see
gotta
that
make sure,
one?
you know, just because it's not the evaluation, the
Right.
survey.
So
'Cause we're
just
creating it-
feedback. This needs to
And
say
if my
feedback.
mind's wrong,
Yeah.
I'm seeing that you survey me in the fall,
Yep.
evaluate me in the spring. You
Yep.
can
100%.
always evaluate me on performance related to issues you have, but the true annual evaluations in the spring and the survey will be fall. That's why we're splitting it up over 2 seasons.
Yep.
And again, I'm not telling you, I'm asking because I'm trying to wrap
No.
my mind around a little bit of it too as we build it. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Good catch. I've tried to be really good about getting that and I missed that one. I'll take a look at this grid again, but if people want to take a look down through, it helped me to see how the things sort of fit together and overlap. So I think that I might add it into the document so counselors who want to see it in a more grid format can. I'll leave the text explanation that has more details, but
I suggest, oh, sorry.
you go, Clint.
As a suggestion, rather than, it says send it to the manager. My envision was that you, Sarah, you and Dan, or just Dan, would deliver it, so to speak. I think there would be a, hey, here it is, kind of, just so that if there's any,
Yep.
Yep. Otherwise you could be, just to kind of, that it's a council seen it, I'm here to deliver it with you.
Yeah.
Sure. And that Dan and I, or you and Dan and I, could just have not a meeting, but just, here it is. And in case I have questions, because there could be like, whoa, what's I'm confused. What does this mean? Last thing I want to do is say, hey, I got to wait 2 weeks or a week and a half to say, I'm really confused by line 12. Yeah.
Okay, I can change that to say delivered.
Yeah.
Everyone else want to take a look and see if there's anything else in here that looks off. And if you don't want this grid in there, just speak up. I made it because I was going crazy trying to figure out how they all fit together. Did other people find it helpful?
Yes.
I think in true Sarah fashion, you are an overachiever.
It was driving me nuts. I couldn't figure out what was happening on the same weeks. So. Good enough, or do you want me to scroll down?
No, it's good.
Okay. The last part here, I did want your feedback on. I added a column about what happens in the spring because I think it's just important council gets what Clint was just saying, that this is where the evaluation happens, the formal evaluation. So I put April because that's 6 months after October, which is when we would have done the 6-month check-in. Is April make sense, Clint? Or do you feel like there's a reason April doesn't work structurally?
I mean, we could be busy with budgets and putting
gonna
time
say, it's
in
gonna be
during
right in the
budget
middle of the
seasons.
budget.
But again,
Would you rather see it in March?
April's better than May, because May
Right.
is the big lift of budget process. Let's stick with first council meeting in April. I mean, if you're good, let's try it. I mean, we
Okay.
can always change it.
Yeah,
Let's
it
try
can be moved to March. I just sort of wanted to highlight for council that this is actually where the formal evaluation's happening, that it is separate from this stuff, which is the performance survey review. Are we good?
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe this is likely a municipal a government thing, but it just seems weird. But I don't know how else to do it. That essentially we determine Clint's salary, and if we decide to give him a increase or what have you, it's up to him to put it in the budget that's presented to us to vote on. And I guess that's that. There's no other way around that. It just seems very odd, but it's just a process thing. So
As budgets are built, you will see the first budget you get, because you probably will see a draft before you have met and set it. I will not put it at 0. I will put it at what all other employees are estimated it at. And so then if you want to move it to 0,
you're right.
we can move it to 0. And if you want to move, it's just, there's no other way to do it. So that's what I've told Zach.
No,
you're figuring wages.
You're
If you
entirely
pick-
correct. This is just the first time that I've seen it in writing, and it just. But you're right. There's no other way to do it. It just seems weird. But okay.
Okay. Good question. All right. So I'm going to go back to the original document and keep us on track for time. I think, however, we have now answered all the questions. Oh, so the second council vote, we already had executive session discussion about, but just it will come up again, just flagged that there is a part in the current contract which we should probably alter to reflect that the 360-degree performance evaluations will happen in the fall, not at the end of the fiscal year. And this language here that says 360-degree evaluation will be changed to say 360-degree performance survey. So we'll get that language fixed also. Everybody good? That's the second thing council will need to vote on. Yeah. Okay, so then we get into the actual drafts of the two surveys that this committee has spent a good bit of time working on and creating. Jacob asked, like, why are we voting on these if we're already say we want to do the process? I think the reason we're voting on these is because we've already spent a lot of time on them. And if council likes them as is, it would be good to just know, like, council thinks this is good. It's the right draft to move forward with. Yes, vote yes on this draft for the town manager, vote yes on this one for the council. If they don't like them and they want them completely different, I darn well hope somebody else volunteers to do it.
We'll write
I
'em.
think this committee has already like done everything we can on them. Where are you all feeling?
Yeah.
Yeah. And as far as taking not taking the exam, filling out the
Yeah, I wanted feedback on that. How'd that go?
surveys. Well, so I did not print them out, but I answered questions writing my answers down on other paper. And
Yeah.
I'll say, I mean, it seemed I got interrupted in the middle of doing the town manager one, but I would say I'd estimate it was probably around 14 to 16 minutes. The council one took me under 10. But one thing I'm thinking about is depending on how much people actually do have for examples or additional feedback, those spaces, whether or not they feel sufficient. Maybe they are.
You mean the number of lines, Rob?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that will be fine because digitally, I think it doesn't cap the amount that we can put, I think.
Perfect. Great. So
How
then
long did it take you, Jacob?
Yeah, so I was under 10 minutes for both of them, but I also am a concise writer and just I didn't do a lot of in-depth writing on them. So I think our timing is there.
Yeah, I will say
If you're
I
gonna write
mean,
a paragraph response, then
I normally
Yeah.
am one to try to write more substantial paragraph responses. I was also more concise than probably I usually would be. I was just trying to make sure I did it somewhat in the spirit of the thing, but I wasn't, going as
Yeah.
earnestly as I might otherwise.
Yeah, I'm not usually the most concise human. There's a surprise for either anybody here. And it actually took me less than 10 to do each of them also. I did one of them in 9 and the other one in 7 or something. So I feel like our time estimate actually could probably say approximately 10 minutes, Rob, if you actually got interrupted in the middle of
Yeah.
the one that took you 14. How do people feel about that? I mean, approximate is approximate, but
I also think you guys are counselors and you're putting more thought into it than probably the average person. They're gonna come in there and be
Right.
more, and someone that's gonna put a lot of thought into it is gonna self-determine, I know I'm gonna be more than 10 minutes because I want to put a lot of thought into this. So
right.
yeah, probably approximately 10 minutes probably isn't the worst. Yeah.
I think
I
that
just
seems
didn't want you
accurate.
guys to find out that, my gosh, I can't fill this out in more than 20. This took me 25 minutes. This is long.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think we're on track is I guess what I wanted to say. Thank you all for doing the demo to find out. Okay. So I want to jump to the actual surveys for a minute because I have a few questions still flagged on those. Also, unless you all are opposed, I think I'm going to make the survey drafts attachment A and B. Because if counselors get tired reading through a lot of information, I'd rather they get to the survey drafts than anything else. Because that, I want them to vote on. Everyone fine with that? I know it's a little out of order, but I think it's smarter. Okay. Great. We already talked about this vote on our options. So we are in fact to the surveys. Yay. Okay, here we go. I'll change this to say approximately 10 minutes. And here is the question that I have. So on the demographic info question, which is the very first question in the surveys, I want to talk about the order that we put these categories in. And I also wanted to flag that I added category B, which we did not have before. We can take it out if y'all don't want it, but I added it to flag it for discussion. We had before just Orono staff member, business owner, UMaine student, resident, or other, like work, worship, shop, recreate, visit an Orono category. I added the one about I'm on the Orono Town Council Planning Board or other town board or committee because I feel like that's a different relationship with our town manager. People probably have a very, a different perspective if they're serving on these boards and interacting in that way as opposed to the average resident. But we don't have to have it if y'all don't want it. I don't know otherwise. Anyhow, just what do y'all think? Is it a category we want or don't want?
Remind me again why we even have this
Yeah, so
demographic information.
these are because this is how we'll be able to break the data out later. So this is how Clint will be able to see when he looks at the data, oh, people on my town council and planning boards are generally feeling this way. My staff is generally feeling that way. Business owners have this. These were the categories that had been suggested before, minus B. B I just added to ask because I realized when I looked back at one of the other surveys that they had a category that said, I'm on the board, or I'm on a committee that works directly with the town manager.
But why does it matter who you are in the town?
I think
You are
Go ahead,
what?
Brian.
I think it does frame, it gives more context to where you're coming from in your evaluation. Helps maybe when we're looking at the answers here, understanding which groups are feeling which way might give us a little bit more direction about either where the town manager is really excelling or where the town manager maybe could be spending more time or whatever. I mean, that's just one thought that comes to mind, but I can't see it being a bad thing that we have some demographic information that helps.
Okay.
Well, I guess I'm just talking at length, but I think it contextualizes some of the answers.
Could we
It's
have a prefer not to answer category?
It's recommended that we don't by the data analyst people. This is the one thing that data analysts generally want in a survey is the ability to say like which category of people belong to. We were told this is the one that people should actually be required to answer and every other question they can skip.
That's fine for you, Jacob.
This is supposed to be an anonymous survey, but right off the bat, we're asking people to identify themselves into a category. And I mean, that's the main concern that I have.
Do you think the categories are too specific? Like people would
yeah, I definitely don't like B, but in general, I hesitate on the category. I mean, staff members, if they have to identify themselves as staff, are they going to be less likely to either take the survey or be honest?
I think that is what we were told from the data analysts is that as long as your categories are big enough, it is not a problem. If your categories get very small, that's different. So like if we were to say, check all of these that apply to you. So if you happen to be a staff member who also lives in Orono, who whatever, like all of a sudden that becomes a very small number of people, but we have 80 plus staff members. So that's a big enough category to be anonymous. And all the other categories would be equally big, except you're right, B would probably be category of, by the time we're done with the various committees we have, that's probably more of a category of 40 something to 50 something people by the time we're done. So, I mean, this is typically what you see, and it is the one question that the data analysts all said should not be optional. So I'm loath to overrule the data analysts, but council certainly can.
And that's fine. I disagree with B then.
Okay, so that would mean, Jacob, if we fill it out as counselors, we're just going to be random Orono residents, which I mean, it is a bit of an unusual, it's a different position, right? We are privy to a whole lot of more interactions and information. So we probably have a pretty different perspective. We may skew the resident data, right?
But theoretically, we don't need a survey to tell Clint or the town what we think. We already.
Yeah.
Okay, so B should come out, you all think? And Clint, do you have any opinion?
I know it's such a tough question. This is the hardest part of 360s because there's just so much that there's conflicting interests that are both very valid.
Yeah.
I have
So
one.
yeah, I think you try it for whatever you're comfortable with. I mean, you know, in all the categories, I mean, obviously we've talked about this in the past, an Orono resident that I have to meet with and tell them good news where, you know, you were overtaxed, we're giving you a refund, might fill this out and love us. And then the next one that finds out their tax bill went up is going to come in and not be happy with things, but it has nothing to do with what my performance. It has everything to do with their experience
Right.
with the town related to budgets. So, you know, and same with a staff member. I mean, you know, senior staff versus non-senior staff versus,
Mhm.
you know, somebody that maybe's had an HR issue, you know, and again, it's important for the council to get this, but I mean, I think the ultimate is this is private.
Yeah.
When we're done, it helps you make informed decisions. It's kind of how you use this tool is the ultimate effect. So do you three think the council needs to know that in order to adequately evaluate and make
Yeah.
decisions? If you don't, I'm comfortable with that. I mean, yeah.
I think I do want the demographic information, especially I think staff and residents knowing, you know, how staff is feeling under the manager versus how the residents interact. As far as B, I could be convinced to go with you, Jacob, on B, if only because, at least as far as the council is concerned, we're going to be looking at all of this data anyway, and we should be planning to come into these meetings with some considered opinions, maybe having filled it out for our own personal purposes or whatever. But I think we're going to be discussing candidly our varying
Yeah.
perspective as a council.
Great. Okay, so I'll take B out and we'll leave the rest. Does that sound where we're at?
So a council that does want to fill it up will now be a resident.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, I see the logic in having a counselor fill it out, but I don't think it's as necessary of a category. I'm not gonna.
Okay.
And I'm not, I mean, council, I, whether we fill it out or not, I don't know, don't care, but I could see that, you know, more like, you know, remember the tree board or, you know, one of those kind of smaller committees. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll take it out. Is that fine?
Yep.
Okay. And then it may be possible. Again, we didn't want to create a list where people can check multiple options because that starts to like make it more obvious who somebody is. So people
Yeah.
need to have only one option that they click and they're asked to click. Currently, they're asked to click the one highest up that applies to them. So with B eliminated, that would mean if you're a staff member, please click that. I know it might seem weird to people that business owner and UMaine student show up before Orono resident, but that's only because we want to know if you were a student, right? If you don't, if you want student below resident, that's fine, but it means a lot of students will be Orono residents and we won't know that they're UMaine students. It's like a logic thing. We only know what category is the highest up. So are you more interested in knowing that somebody, we already had said business owner should be after staff. But are y'all more interested in knowing, you know, that you're getting all the student data compiled together in one spot? Or are you more interested in knowing that you're getting all the Orono resident data compiled, whether you're a student or a non-student? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think you're overthinking the order. As I read what is your role in Orno,
Mhm.
I would choose the biggest percentage of me, regardless of the order of the A, B, C, D, E, F.
Okay, so then
That's
we
how
just have
I
to,
initially read it.
so then we have to just change the instructions because they currently say check the one that's highest up on the list as opposed to letting people have an option. I mean, they may do.
And
what
I
they-
read that to say the one that is highest up to you. So
Okay,
I
got it.
actually read that
interpretation.
too. I felt that as like, what do I most strongly identify with?
Perfect. So
Maybe
should I
that's how you
change,
phrase that.
should I change this language to say, what do you most strongly identify with, as opposed to trying to ask people to, in fact, first tell us if they're a staff member or a business owner?
Yeah. If you have more than one role, please choose the role that most strongly that you,
Pertains to you or
or
whatever.
most strongly pertains to you, in your opinion, or something.
Yeah.
All right. I will do so. Thanks. I just realized we hadn't really talked about this part and it seems important. So thank you for the discussion. I don't think there's any other questions that I flagged that we haven't talked about and rewritten a million times on this, with the exception of, I will try to put some note here on the survey. Just to be clear that this question would need to go, depending on what happens with festival days, whether it happens, whether it doesn't. If it doesn't happen till October, people aren't probably going to have much opinion yet, right? So that's sort of an optional question, depending on where we're at with that. Everyone good?
Yep.
I flagged the same beginning section here. So I'll change the intro here also on the counselor questionnaire. And I think that's the last question that I had on one of the surveys. What have I missed that other people came in with questions on?
I had nothing else.
I'm just going through my notes that I sent to you, Sarah, and
Oh, I know one I have from you, Jacob. I took notes on yours also and tried to bring them in. One question is, Jacob asked, how do we know that the town manager performance survey responses can't be forwarded?
oh yes, yep.
Right.
I just got to
And,
that question. Yep.
The answer to that is that I asked Meredith and Brian how they knew that they couldn't be forwarded, and the answer was they had a legal consult with Drummond and Woodsum, their
Okay.
attorneys, who said these are not forwardable documents. They are information on part of a personnel review. So they were told by their legal consult that they paid for that they're not. Now, if we have reason to think that's somehow different in the municipal world, I'm hoping that's the sort of thing that Lori Boucher would flag for us and say, I don't think this is true in HR in the municipal world. But the reason is because of the RSU's legal consult. Clint, do you have anything to say? I'm assuming Lori will tell us if she disagrees.
Yeah, we should ask her. My understanding is evaluations are not forwardable. Letters of reprimand are. Town
Right.
manager.
Yeah, I think so.
Perfect.
So I think we're good. There has been an actual legal consult on that, and we have Lori looking at it. But if either of you or anyone has something more they want us to do about that, now's your time to speak up. Okay. And Jacob had some good ideas about the advertising of surveys, like making sure they also
Yeah.
went out on the town text systems. I think I had written just email and not text. And also we figured out how to advertise them at the university. Those are all great things when we get to the implementation stage. I don't think they're
Yep.
questions we need to answer right now. Does anybody? Okay. We have 5 minutes. No one's got another question in mind. Then I have one last thing that I would suggest we read through. Talk about, you already read them. Did everyone feel good about the survey intros? Because we went around with all the details everybody wanted in these intros. I did my darndest. Clint and I looked at them. I did my darndest to get everybody's ideas in, but I just want to directly ask. No one had a problem at this point. I didn't miss something somebody asked for.
Nothing came up for me.
Okay. All right. Then I think we're good. I'm looking through my notes one last time. And otherwise, I just want to say you've all been an amazing committee, super efficient and organized and lovely to work with. And I think it's a good amount of product we've put together. And I think that, well, Jacob, if it ends up with we don't hire the data analyst, whoever the counselor is, doesn't have to do too much. It's pretty much done. They just have to paste afterwards. And even if we do hire the analyst, I know that both analysts made it clear that it was important to know to them how much of a product they were going to be handed to start. And, we had said, we're going to hand you really the survey unless you've got
Soup to
problems
nuts.
with it.
Mhm.
Right. So I feel like we've done our job and we've created a good product that reflects the goals that the council has set for itself and the town manager's work plan that the town manager's created. I think we've done well, and I appreciate everyone's work. It's been a lot of meetings. Am I
Great.
missing anything else from anyone?
I think you did a great job at compiling 38 pages worth of text that we've talked about over the past couple months.
Yeah, luckily a lot of it's attachments that came from other people. 38 by myself would have been miserable. So yeah. I think we're good. I think it'll be a great conversation. So we present at the next council meeting. Um, I'm not planning to turn this into some fancy PowerPoint. If anybody wants to do that, be my guest, but I am maxed out at this point. So I think there'll be screen share available. So we'll be able to scroll through the document, you know, if counselors need to see it up on a screen, if the public needs to see a part we're talking about. But I'm not planning to make a fancy PowerPoint or anything like that. This will go out to the rest of council. I told them at least a week before the meeting. I actually hope that I'll get it out by, well, probably a week because I'll probably get it out on Monday if I'm lucky tomorrow, but I think Monday. Clint, something on
Oh,
your end? You
Well,
look
just
like you're
the
saying something.
memo I'm writing, that's a
Yep.
public document memo. We agreed, right?
Yes,
I have no
100%.
issue with it being public. The only thing that we discussed is that if you don't act on it as it's written, since I won't be able to be at that meeting, you'll just table it.
And you're talking about the memo that highlights that you were part of this planning process and you feel like we've done a thorough and competent job and that your contract needs to be altered
Updated.
in a way.
Yeah, the last part being
And-
if the contract's gonna be updated to match the schedules. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
good with what we're doing and
Yeah.
I've got that started and I just want to finish it. And
Yeah,
if it were to switch, I mean, obviously we'd have to have some, yeah, okay, good.
right, 100%. So I guess that's important for Rob and Jacob to know, like, if council were to say, no, we don't like this schedule, we want to do it totally differently and we want to alter this or that, and any of that would affect Clint's contract, then we would need to table this whole thing until.
Well, I mean,
Clint's
if you
back
decide
and-
not to go for, you could vote to not go forward, say we don't like it, we're, you know, like Jacob
Yeah.
shared. We just gotta meet at some point in
Yeah.
the future. It's not like, there's no, you know, we violated it, and that's not
Yeah.
where I'm going with this. It's just,
Yeah.
what is the process we do want then? Because we gotta figure that out. And
Yeah.
I just love the thoughtfulness of thinking about how we communicate to the community and as a staff.
Yeah.
And as a council with me to make sure, you know, I want to know if I'm, you know, if something's not going right, I need to know.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
have to say I was happy when I did the council version for myself. I'm like, I'm going to be really happy to get this feedback. I'm going to be really glad that we get to hear what, you know, people are happy or not happy about. And I mean, I think especially, you know, in council, like we say that there are elections, but I mean, we each have an election that happens once every 3 years, and you never know then if it's what thing you were working on that people didn't like, or maybe it's something personal that happened outside of a council meeting that they don't want to vote for you anymore. Who knows? But, you know, I feel like getting actual feedback for council as a whole on which of our initiatives are resonating well with people and which ones people are like, I don't like this idea. This is a ridiculous goal, or I don't think you're doing this at all. I want to know that. So I'm excited about it. Doing it made me realize I'm very excited to get that feedback. So
Hey, the only weird ones here are we're going to approve a survey that hasn't been seen by Lori.
it's being viewed as a draft. It says really
Okay.
clearly on there, this is a draft. You're approving it as a draft. And it even says at the bottom of that vote, it can still be altered if the Lori looks at it or the
So her
analyst looks
feedback will
at it.
kind of come back to kneecap. That
Yeah.
will.
I
Okay.
don't even, I mean, I think if there's
She'll ask me like, what do we do? You know, they've approved
Yeah.
it. What do we, you know, what am I doing? So, okay. Yeah.
it says on it, you're approving it as a draft, the draft to move forward with. And,
Yeah.
you know, it could still be altered depending on what we hear from the human resources person. And also something could change between now and summertime that, I mean, heaven
Yeah.
forbid that we have something like COVID again, but right. I mean, all of a sudden there could be totally different things we have to get evaluated on how we're handling like this crisis or that crisis. Those things happen
Yeah.
occasionally. So I don't think
Yeah.
this thing gets formalized and finalized until, you know, summer, but I would hope that we commit to it as a draft we feel solid about and we don't have to look at it again for a long time. Everyone feel good about that? Okay, so anyway, I'm happy to introduce the report. And Jacob, I hope you will jump right in on, you know, we get to the choices about how we proceed, about that the choices here are we fund it, or some counselor jumps up and says, I'll do it. I'll be the one to cut and paste. And
Yeah, I unfortunately know how that's gonna go, but
well, you could, yeah, we'll see. Okay, so I think we're good.
are we voting on it next meeting or
Yes.
presenting it and then voting the following meeting?
My understanding is that this will, Clint, you want to answer that question? My understanding is.
I have it
this
on
is-
as action items, discussion with action.
I think
no
so. So I
presentation.
think it gets sent a week ahead. We present during the presentation part of the meeting. We present the report and counselor, is that right? Or, and then when we get to the action part, we vote individually on each. Is that correct, Clint?
I did not have it as a presentation for you.
Okay,
to present.
perfect.
I
It's
had them
easier
all
just
as
to do it-
action items. So I thought the first agenda
Yep.
item within that would be all these memos and you would explain there and then the votes precede it. We can talk about that at agenda setting on Tuesday as well, but I just kind of had it as one item, not like a public hearing earlier in the meeting and then later or a presentation earlier and then later. You're coming out with your report, you're gonna present it, and there's action items recommended, so they'll be queued up as orders for you to vote on, and you'd want.
The only concern I have
Actually,
is,
go ahead, Sarah.
the only concern I have about that, and I could go either way, I guess, but the only concern I have is that some of these votes, like, you know, I could imagine somebody saying, well, I'm not ready to vote yet on the money because we haven't talked about the part of the report that gives the statements on what that cost. I don't know. We might have to jump around a little to make that work.
Do
What do
you
you think,
want a
Jacob?
action presentation in advance of the action item in the action items? It would be weird to present at the very beginning and then 25, 30 minutes later, we get to the votes.
So my thought is not to prolong this, but Jesus, could we present at one meeting, vote at the next? Because we are handing people 38 pages of written material and asking them to read, digest, and vote.
Well, what I'd like to see, Jacob, is if we presented first and then the votes are listed as possible action items, I think that fits the idea of making sure that if council is ready to vote, they can vote. And if we're not, we make a motion to table and those votes just get tabled to the next meeting. I hate to I feel like with the kneecap recommendations, part of what we're trying to avoid is having scenarios where if we're ready to vote, we can't, right? If it's not listed as an order, we don't even have the option to vote. And if it's listed as an order, it just gives us an option to vote. We can say not ready and table it till next month easily.
Yeah, just where there's so much information here. I mean, I've read it. We all have lived it, but imagine getting this and reading it for the first time. I mean, you can do it that way, and I think I will make a motion to table it until the next meeting for that exact reason.
I'm okay if we want to, I mean, this is sort of a discussion for Clint and Dan about workload that's coming, right? And so if it feels like it fits workload, fine. I don't mind. I'm perfectly happy that we present and we vote the next month if that's what this committee prefers.
Yeah, I don't feel a particular rush to get this out. I think a presentation in one meeting and then plan to vote on to the next one. And I mean, I get what you're saying, Sarah, just having the option available if everybody feels okay with it, being able to vote on it. Like that does also make sense to me. So I guess I just don't feel very strongly in either direction. I don't see an urgency, but I like the idea of if everybody already feels all right about it, having the ability to just get it off our plate.
I think we can talk with Dan about it at our planning meeting. My inclination is just, again, from the kneecap recommendations to, whenever possible, give us the option to vote on things if we're ready. It's sort of a general principle, not so much about this, Jacob, that I'd like to see us working toward.
The
So
draft
are you
will
guys-
have it as a presentation at the very beginning. We'll still leave the action items there. Jacob's option's still there that they can be tabled. If something changes between now and then,
Yeah.
we can always retailor it. And the only thing I would probably change is if it's just going to be a presentation with predetermined no votes, I would probably move the presentation to the agenda item where it is that kneecap presents. At the very end, you would do your presentation then. That would be the only change I would recommend.
At the end of what, Clint?
The agenda. So we have presentations are always at the beginning, but we also have that committees report out at the very end of the meetings. If you were just going to report out with no votes, I'd do it at the very end. That's
Yeah, I
the
think it
difference,
should-
and I'll talk to Dan about that.
Do we just need a table?
Yeah,
Huh?
I think it should be at the beginning though, because I do think that, this is something that is really about community interaction and getting feedback from the community. And I never want people to have to sit around at a meeting waiting all the way to the end if it's a report that they're interested in hearing.
So I will set it at the beginning. I'll leave the votes there. We'll talk about agenda setting. If you want to table them, they can be tabled. And that's something you'll figure out at the meeting on Monday.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Awesome. And Jacob and Rob, please jump in at any point during the presentation part. I do not need to do that on my own. I hope you'll speak a lot and anytime you want. Thank you all.
Thank you,
All right.
everybody.
Bye.